Welcome to this week's edition of Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my lovely co-host, who's rocking a very nice camouflage hat. I can barely see the top of his head. Keith Glasser, how we doing?
Great. How are you?
Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year.
This is the first recording of 2024.
It is.
Not the first podcast posted, but the first recording of
First recording. Peek behind the screen.
We got a pretty important topic today, something I know that we're both passionate about, and we've had a ton of conversations with different coaches about this specific topic and getting their insights on some different angles to this one. But we want to talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with quality people, not only with just the recruiting process, but from a development perspective, from an academic perspective, and just in general, surrounding yourself with people that are going to lift you up and hold you accountable and do the things that are going to help you get to where you want to go. So I think there's quite a bit to unpack here. I know we're going to hit it from a couple different angles. So let's kick it off here, Coach. What do we got?
Yeah, I think we've touched on this quite a bit in a lot of podcasts about, having people in your corner and what you should do and what you need to do and the honest evaluation, things of that nature. And I think, it's one of the most important things that you need to have during your recruiting process. And it's not necessarily just from a coach standpoint. I think that there's an academic component, there's a development component, there is obviously the coaching component. There's a lot of different things that go into this recruiting process for student athletes that, you want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best possible position and surrounding yourself with the best people that you possibly can to give yourself the most advantageous chance of being recruited. And that starts with people who you can surround yourself with that are going to tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. There's a lot of people that'll just flat out tell you like, yeah, you're really good. I don't necessarily think, I think you can play college baseball. I think you fit in at this level. And, I think, from a development and from a coaching standpoint, I think it's fair. And especially nowadays with, what I hear people pay for, teams to play on and such, like what are you getting out of that? What is the expertise of the person that is coaching you? And this isn't necessarily a dig on the people who are doing this, because this is what makes the baseball world tick, the people who volunteer their time and give up a lot of their time to go coach. It's not what this is designed for, right? Like I love those people. That's literally what makes this game amazing, is that you have a ton of people who literally volunteer their time for young people to be able to play this game. But when you start getting into the upper levels and you're thinking about, playing college baseball and doing things, you want to be able to have somebody who has knowledge of what's actually going on in the college baseball world, or has had knowledge of what went on in the college baseball world, so that they can really help you and guide you through the process of what to do. And again, this isn't meant to be a dig, but if you have somebody who's an accountant who Monday through Friday is your coach, and their expertise is that they played high school baseball when they were in high school 35 years ago, what are they going to be able to develop you enough to become a college baseball player? And in some instances they might. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's worth asking when you're going through this process of, where am I going? Where am I playing? And I think on the same hand, and again, it's not to take a dig at people, but, if you have a 21-year-old kid fresh out of college who's coaching a summer team, like, I don't know what it is that, I don't know how good that's going to be. Again, it's not a dig at people. It's just the reality. And it's a fair question to ask as a parent going through this with the amount of money that I know people pay. Like, what is this going to help develop my son into the player that, he wants to be, and ultimately get him to achieve the goals it is that he wants to achieve? And some people, it might, right? Like, not everyone wants to play college baseball. So it might for a good portion of a good segment of the population. But, for the people who really want to, go and play at super high levels, like, are you practicing a lot in the summer? I hear it all the time from a lot of people, and we hear it from families like, yeah, we play on this team, but like we really only just play tournaments. Like, are you practicing? Are you developing? Are you getting better at actually playing the game of baseball? Or is it just really designed for you to just kind of showcase? Those types of things are worth asking in this process, because having those people in your corner that can help develop you, especially the people who are going to be around you a lot during the summer to help you from a gameplay standpoint, can they make you a better baseball player? Like that, ultimately, that's what you want. Are you going to be able to make me a better baseball player? And if the answer is no, then you need to reassess where you're at and make a decision to go do something else. And I don't think there's a lot of red flags out there when it comes to people who jump to different organizations and stuff. I mean, I think if it's like 15 and 15 years, like, yeah, maybe that's a red flag. But, if you decide during sophomore year, like, hey, this really isn't for us because we're not getting everything out of it that we want, like, that's a fine decision to make to ultimately get to where you want to go, and surround yourself with more people that have done this before, have sent multiple players to college, have sent players to multiple levels, Division One, high end Division One, mid major Division One, Division Two, Division Three, JUCO, NAIA, whatever it is. But have people who know what it looks like from a baseball standpoint. We'll get into some of the academics and development and things like that. But strictly from a coaching standpoint, you want to make sure that because the vast majority of time you're going to be recruited in the summer, right? Like your high school coach is only going to see it for what, 7-8 weeks? No, we'll call it 12, whatever. But if they have a little bit of insight, they can help you get better. But you're going to spend July, August, September, sometimes October with a summer coach, and it could be multiple. Like you could have different coaches. Like that's another thing to think about. Who is coaching you, who's surrounding you, and who's going to be able to ultimately make you a better baseball player when we're talking about gameplay stuff.
Yeah, there's a diversity of people that can help you too. Like there's a lot of people who do this stuff for all the right reasons, and they still might not have the tools to help you move forward from a recruiting perspective, but it might be the right person to help you get better from a playing perspective or from a personal perspective. So like don't get it twisted on what we're trying to say here. We're trying to say is make sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people who are the right type of people. I think is what's important to get out of this, is that you can have a diverse collection of people in your corner that can help you get better from a technical perspective, from a baseball perspective. You can have coaches that are basketball coaches or football coaches that are going to help you get better as an athlete, as a competitor, and they're going to hold you accountable. You can have people that can help you in the weight room. I think it's really important to just assess who's in your circle and make sure that those people can actually, that they're benefiting you, but also that they're helping you because they're doing it because they're doing it from a good place, right? That they're not doing it for themselves. And I think that sometimes in this space, in this recruiting space, it can really easily become about not necessarily the player, but about being able to say that you helped this player, or that I placed this guy here, or it's all about how big the commitment is. It's not about the individual. I heard somebody say this the other day, is that a lot of travel organizations try to hang their hat on all their Division One guys, when travel organizations should be in some ways judged by how many guys go play at the Division 3 level, because that tells me that you have a diversity of people and a diversity of contacts that allows you to place kids up and down the spectrum of college baseball. Because at the end of the day, we all know if a kid can play in the ACC, you're not going to have any trouble placing that kid, right? That's the easy kid. It's the kid who finds a great academic fit at the Division 3 level and gets a chance to go and play college baseball and compete. Can you find the right fit for that kid? And not that that's the end all be all, but that's a piece of criteria that you should evaluate when you're looking at a travel ball and where you're looking to play for the summer. But the people that you surround yourself with, and this I think is really, really important. You have to have people in your corner that are going to love you when you need to be loved. They're going to hold you accountable when you need to be held accountable. And they're going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And I think that a lot of times people don't want to tell kids the truth because they don't want to hurt their feelings when the truth is actually going to help them get to where they're going to be. And the truth doesn't mean you have to be an ass about it. The truth is giving them information so that they can continue to move forward. But if you let a kid wallow in something and he doesn't have the chance to progress because you didn't give him the information, you're doing that kid a disservice. So make sure that you have those people that can sit you down and say, "Hey, listen, right now you want to play college baseball and your biggest gap is that you're not strong enough. And you really need to think about what are we going to do in the next 3 months to get you stronger, right? Or listen, you need to get in better shape. Or right now you don't throw hard enough." And just even simple stuff like that, people shy away from those conversations because it's easy to do it, but you're actually doing that kid a disservice. And you want to make sure that you have those type of people in your corner because they're the ones who are, when they tell you those things and they let you know that you have progress to make and they give you a path to actually find that improvement and go down the path of improvement, those are the people who actually care about you. The people who can't look you in the face and tell you that you need to get better are the ones who are just there just to be there. And I think there's a big distinction there. And I wish more people would do that with kids. And like I said, you don't have to be mean. It can be incredibly constructive, but you need people there to tell you the truth. Because the truth is going to get you where you want to go.
The truth shall set you free. I want to pull this thread just for a second. The other piece of it too that I just want to talk about briefly is, and again, I'm not trying to hammer anybody when it comes to the coaching end of things, but when you're in these organizations and you're making decisions on what teams to play for and stuff is, and the reason that I say you want to work with people who have, to your point, like organizations that have multiple Division I guys or Division III guys, and you see Division II guys, and people have gone and played everywhere, right? It tells you that one, they have multiple contacts. It tells you that they have the talent on the field that is going to get college coaches to come watch, because college coaches know the teams that have had success in the past and they've had success with from a playing standpoint. They're going to show up and watch those teams. Like there's equity in those teams to be able to show up. Now, we can get into this is a whole other thing that we can get into, like the big giant organizations where there's 47,000 teams. Like that might not necessarily be true in that instance, but there's going to be teams where coaches have had success before in the past. They're going to go back to them, whether it's JUCO or summer ball. But what I really want to kind of parse out of this is, Coach Rossi talked about it when we interviewed him about, he would tell kids, hey, if there's if there's a scout in your area, ask what he thinks and what where he thinks you might fit in and what level it is and what you might need to work on. And part of the reason he would go to the scout is I know that somebody who's seen, you can't quantify the amount of baseball that person has seen, right? And especially if it's an older scout, if it's, you're in an organization that has ex-college baseball coaches in it, or guys who have run travel baseball at a high level for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they've seen a lot of baseball and they can start to figure out where to fit people in, right? Like you spent 11 years coaching college baseball. I spent 16. The amount of baseball that we have seen in our careers is not necessarily quantifiable from an experience standpoint for what you can do and where you can take a look at a kid, watch them play and be like, okay, I know like this kid would fit in at this level right now. If he gets bigger, faster, stronger, he might be like, he's a fringe Division I guy. If he can get a little bit stronger and the bat speed increases a little bit, like he runs a tenth or 2/10 of a second faster, like that's a Division I guy. But right now, he can flat out play at the Division III level and probably find a really good place to play. If you don't have that, and you just have, some guy who's, and again, I'm not hammering anybody, but somebody who's never done that before in their past, it's really hard for college coaches to take that recommendation from that coach, because they're going to do a little digging on that person as well. Like, okay, how much does this person know? Because we've talked about it before. Like, at the end of the day, it's a business. Like, you got to win. So you're going to take recommendations, but you're going to take recommendations from people you trust. These one-offs, and they might not necessarily, that coach's word may not hold as much weight as somebody else's who they trust, who's seen a lot of or a lot of amateur baseball and college baseball, to know where that person is going to fit in. And I think that that's an important distinction to kind of make, and something to think about when you're going through the travel ball, and if you're going to switch teams or who's coaching you, those types of things. What is the resume of this? But how much, what have they done? What have we, where have these kids gone? Those are things that you definitely want to think about. What types of tournaments do you go to? Where have kids in this organization gone in the past? Those are fair questions asked, especially at the price point where a lot of this stuff is, not only from a playing standpoint, but from a travel standpoint. We keep calling it travel baseball. You're going to go travel places and play. That means gas money. That means flights. That means hotels. That means food. There's a lot more added cost that goes into this. And if it's for an organization or for a team or whatever it might be that doesn't necessarily have a track record of being able to really help guys get to the next level and developing guys, those things, those are things that you want to think about. Those are fair questions to ask, and you need to think about those things, because you want to be able to have people in your corner that can legitimately look at you and say, hey, this is where you are now. This is what you need to do to get better, to get to this level. And if you don't know what that is as a coach, that's where I think some people get into they're just told that they're good because they might be the best player on that team. And you need to actually have an idea of what it is that, that kid needs to do in order to get better. So I think sometimes that gets lost a little bit. And again, I hope that I'm not coming off as somebody who's hammering those types of coaches. That's what makes this game amazing and tick. But, you want to make sure that the people in your corner, to your point, are able to tell you the truth about where you fit, what you need to do to get better, but also have the wherewithal to legitimately know what that is. Because if you don't know what it is, your guess is as good as anybody's. You want to be able to have somebody who can say, hey, we've coached 100 kids who have gone and played at the college level. You remind me of these 5 kids who all played at the Division III level. And this is the skill set. I think you fit in there. These are the schools that we should target. Because ultimately, I've heard it from so many travel coaches, families go in, they talk about what school, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, LSU, yeah, everyone wants to play there, but that's such a small segment of college baseball and potential student athletes that are going to end up there. And sometimes they get told no, and people don't like the answer, but that's you're going to get told no in this process from a lot of people, and you should respect the fact of people who have done this before and know that they're not trying to do it from there's no malice behind it. It's more trying to help you and aid you in this process.
Yeah, credibility matters in this world, right? And let me take it back a quick step. You can't make up thousands of hours of experience watching college baseball, watching high school baseball. You can't make that up. There's a certain amount of effort and a certain amount of time that goes into that. And having somebody in your corner that has either seen a lot of players who have gone on to the next level, or has coached a lot of players who've gone on to the next level, who has coached at the next level, they have a knowledge of the college baseball landscape that's going to allow you to make a more educated decision, and they're going to be able to point you in a much cleaner direction. And I think it's as simple as that. Like you said, it's nothing against it's nothing against the young kid who's out there who's just fresh off the field, and he's got a ton of energy and he's doing awesome stuff for your kids. Like that kid's super valuable in your circle if he really cares and he's there every day and he shows up. But he can't be the person that you rely on for the recruiting advice because honestly, he doesn't know anything. So, and we've had every single coach that we've talked to on this has explicitly said, and I don't know how many interviews we've had at this point, but I mean, we've had coaches from the Division III level, we've had coaches at the mid-major Division I, we've had coaches who've coached in the College World Series in the last 2 years, right? So we've had a broad spectrum of coaches, a broad spectrum of levels. One of the consistent themes that we've gotten from these guys is there's certain people we trust, and we lean on people who have credibility. And generally, you lean on people you trust because you have experience with them providing you good information on players, truthful information on players, not just telling you what you want to hear. And then the credibility piece is if I don't know that guy incredibly well, what's that guy's background? Has he ever coached college baseball before? Has he ever recruited before? Does he know what a player that plays at our level looks like? Does he have any insight on what type of program we run? Those are the questions that these guys that they lean on when it comes to this world. And a lot of these guys, that's how they find players. So if you don't have somebody in your corner that has a little bit of credibility, or at least an above average knowledge of the actual landscape of college baseball, and you really desire to play college baseball, you need to think about getting somebody or making sure that you have somebody in your circle that can give you that kind of information. And I can promise you it's not going to be the dad on the team that thinks your son's good. Right.
Right.
It's just really that simple. Like it's the blunt truth of it. The guy who's seen a bunch of high school baseball and whose son's a pretty good player, like he's probably not a good resource.
No. I think one of the easiest ways, and this, because we're on this topic, and I think it's a good segue into the development piece. I had there was a kid that tried out at RPI when I was the head coach, and I cut him. He wasn't good enough, and I got a email from the guy that gave him lessons telling me that the area that he came from, it was going to give that whole area pause to ever go to my school because he was a really good player, and he definitely knew that he could play in my program and play in the league. And I'll be honest with you, I called the coaches in the area that person was from and asked around. I got some valuable insight from those people that he was not the most knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. And I responded and just said, if you've ever seen us play, please respond to this email. But I'm guessing you've literally never seen my team. You've never been to a practice. You've never been to a game. You have no idea what is in my program. And for you to tell me that you know for sure that this kid could play for me is wildly off base. And, I think it speaks to, the development piece, but also the coaching piece of it when, coaches do not love when they hear from parents or coaches or whatever that, unless it's a trusted source, again, and I'm going to say this, like, unless it's somebody that like I explicitly trust and know, if you're somebody who I've never met before in my life and you call me or email me and tell me that this kid for sure can play in my program and I don't know who you are, I do not believe you. Like, it just does not matter. If because especially like, let's say you email me from Nebraska, the chances of you have ever seen my team play is probably zero. So for you to make a statement that for sure this kid can play for me, like, I just don't believe you. I'm going, like, am I going to vet it a little bit? Yeah, maybe, but it's starting the relationship off on not the best foot because you have absolutely no idea what goes on in the program that you're emailing. You don't know the kids, you don't know the players, like. So it's a hard, like, you're not doing yourself or that kid a benefit by starting the relationship or the conversation off that way. So it's, there were only a handful of people, and everybody who's ever coached at the college level has a handful of people that they will explicitly trust when they call and say, hey, this kid can play. He can 100% fit in your program. But the caveat is, and this is where I think it's important, is that it's always finished with, but it's your decision to make on whether or not he's going to be in your program. And that is an important distinction to make when we have these conversations. And if there's travel coaches and parents and players listening to this, like, it's an important distinction to make, because that tells me, and again, these are people that I trust explicitly, but that tells me, like, okay, they know that they have the skill set to play at our level. It's just on me as to decide whether or not this kid's going to fit into the program. And that's from a gameplay standpoint, that's from a position standpoint, that's from a character standpoint. It's all of those things. But from a straight up skill set standpoint, I know I can go watch that kid, because it's like, okay, this person who I explicitly trust thinks that, like, knows that this kid can play at our level. Now I have to figure out whether or not it's going to fit into our program. And that's an important distinction to make, because there's that one, it's a level of respect, but it's that the knowledge of, like, hey, this kid can play, like, he'll fit in at your level, but it's up to you as to whether or not you want to pursue it. And I've had it. I've had that hundreds of times in my career. And, Cole Paquin was one. Cole Paquin was rookie of the year for me at RPI in 2019. I got a call from Coach Healy, who we played for at Marist, and he was like, listen, kid can flat out hit. Like, he can play for you. Show up. Let me know what you think. And showed up. He hit. So, come on, let's go. And he ended up being rookie of the year. He hit like 425 or something his freshman year. It was absurd. And he had a really good career. But, like, those things happen. Like, that was a kid that I was not recruiting. I didn't know who he was. And Heels called me and was like, yo, you got to go see this kid play. He can flat out hit, and he can play for you. And I went in, I made the decision. I saw him play. I thought he could play, met with the kid, met with the family. It was amazing. He had a great career. And, I'm glad that he ended up obviously telling me about the kid, but, those things happen, and I think that important distinction to make is that, like, coaches have that immediate circle, and outside of that, it's going to be taken with a grain of salt when you have those conversations.
Well, when Heels calls you, he's probably one of the only guys on the planet that you could take somebody just completely blindly.
He's also one of the guys who taught me how to recruit. So when
I coached with Heels for 1 year, and I may have learned more about evaluating and how to just view a kid. And
he's and I'm not saying this because we played for him and I love the guy. I'm saying this because I believe this to be true. He's one of the best talent evaluators I've ever been around.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I wish I had a chance to learn more from him. Just the 1 year I was there, he taught me so much about what to look at, what to look for, how to project, and he was just always right. Like, it was a big reason why all those pro guys came out of Marist those couple of years.
Yeah,
it's because he was able to see stuff in kids that other guys didn't see.
Yep.
That's how you end up with Mike Gallick and John Swin and Zach Shank and McCarthy and, like,
Ricky Passion.
Yeah, shout out Ricky. But what we're driving at really is that having people in your corner who have credibility matters, right? Like, coaches call people that they trust. They answer calls from people that they trust. And they leverage them not just for the talent piece, but they leverage them because those guys are going to give them a straight shot on what the kid is like, right? So if you don't have somebody in your corner like that, I would suggest you try to find somebody in your corner, or get somebody in your corner that's going to be able to help you with that kind of stuff. Because, yeah, being a really good player is a really good place to start, but you want to stack the chips in your favor the best you can. And the people that you associate yourself with and the people that you have in your corner, I can promise you they're way more important than the showcase events or the money you spend to go do exposure. The people you have in your corner are way more valuable than that. So start there in terms of who's going to be with you, who's going to help you get better. Do you have the person who your kid clicks with from a pitching perspective or from a hitting perspective? Is that guy going to be able to get them over the hump? Do you need to change those coaches to get to the next level? Right? Everybody, every relationship in the coaching world, like, eventually kind of comes to an end where, if you're 15 or 16 years old and you've got a hitting coaches that you've been working with since you were 11, and you're starting to hit a wall, maybe you need to go find somebody else that can help you unlock that next step. Same thing from a pitcher perspective. And like those are tough conversations, it's tough decisions to make, but you only get one shot at this. So you need to make sure that you have the people that are going to get you to where you want to go. And it all really starts with people. Like I talked to Eric before this, a good friend of ours, and he said, "What are you guys going to talk about tonight?" I said, "We're going to talk about the importance of people and surrounding yourself with good people." And his simple response was, "Yeah, it's probably the most important thing there is." And I know that the recruiting world gets caught up in the exposure events and the rankings and the metrics. And yeah, that stuff is a piece of it. But the people are what make it go. And they're the people that you end up playing with, the people that you end up being coached by. They're going to have way more of an impact than you can possibly imagine. So I think fundamentally, the recruiting process gets triggered towards social media and metrics and rankings. But when you really get down to the crux of it, it's going to be driven by surrounding yourself by good people and making sure that you have people that are invested in you as a player, that are invested in you as a person, and are genuinely there to help you and aren't doing it for any reason other than because it's the right thing to do.
Nailed it. Put a bow on it. I think the next piece is the development piece. Surrounding yourself with people who are, from a, not just strictly a lesson standpoint, but, strength and conditioning and those types of things that are going to be able to get you to the next level as well. I think it's, strength and conditioning has obviously become a huge component of college baseball. And I think that being able to get somebody who can, and it could be someone at school, it could be a private and personal trainer, whatever it is. I have somebody that can help you start getting yourself more physical to be able to handle what you are going to undertake when you get to college. I saw something on Twitter earlier today about how one of the biggest things that freshmen deal with during their first year is not being physical enough, and trying to start in the weight room when you get to college is you're already behind. And I think that's one component of getting into the recruitment process of making sure that you want to be checking that box as well with somebody who can help from a functional strength and baseball standpoint. How many times have we thought when we coached, and how many times do we hear now, and how many times do you hear people say like, yeah, he's good, but he's got to get stronger. He's got to get faster. It's something that you hear all the time, and I think that there's a market out there now with a lot of people that, add the strength and conditioning component into, whether it's an indoor facility where they give lessons and stuff like that. And it's becoming a huge piece because you want to be able to give yourself every advantage possible in this process, and being able to get into the weight room. And this is not the old when we were going through it. And there's still some people that think this, like, you can't get too big and you're going to be stiff. And like, no, man, like the weight room is a huge component in college baseball. It is huge. We've had every coach on here that we've interviewed talks about how important the weight room is in their program. Everybody is lifting. So you want to be able to find somebody who can help you get to the goals that you need to get to, before you even get to college, because then you're going to, your body maturation and all of those things are going to start to take over, where you're going to continue just naturally getting bigger, faster, stronger. But if you can start giving yourself an advantage in the recruitment process, it's going to go a long way, and having somebody who knows how to do that with you and how your body moves and all of those things, is huge. And I think the other piece of it too is there's, everybody has a hitting coach. Everybody has a pitching coach. Everybody has, I don't know how many people have a defensive coach. I've talked about this before. I think that's, one of the things that is a little bit fallen by the wayside, but, I know they're out there. So I'm not going to say, nobody does, but it's certainly at a lower clip than the hitting and pitching guys. And I think that being able to find people that are able to develop you, and to your point, like if you hit a wall with some people, like it's okay to try something else. But you want to ask questions in that process just as much as you do from a travel standpoint. You want to be able to be with somebody who understands, how bodies move, what arm strength programs we should be on, when should we be throwing, when should we be not be throwing. What do all of those things look like? Because I think sometimes, there's a little bit of a stigma, and I'm sorry to say this to the people who do this, and I know there's a lot of really good people out there, but there is a little bit of a stigma from a college coach standpoint, because it's like you got to get paid, so you're just going to continue to work on stuff. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there is that thought process. Every college coach has had that thought process, still thinks that, whatever. So it's, is it something where you're doing lessons all year long? Like, at some point in time, you should probably put a baseball down and not be throwing bullpens every single week for the entire year. So it's figuring that stuff out. Like, what type of hitting coach is it? Like, are you, is this leading to success on the field? Right? Like, if I'm going to go spend money on a hitting coach, I want to make sure that I'm finding the success on the field at whatever level it is when I actually go play. And in some regards, it might be the player. In other regards, it might be the approach or the swing that you're being taught. And I think, we keep referencing Twitter today, but I actually saw a tweet from a guy who used to play for the South Troy Dodgers, where I played for after me, played at Central Connecticut, and then played pro ball for a while, who was out in Arizona, and he runs a hitting facility. And he doesn't necessarily have any hot takes, but I saw his, I think I retweeted it today, where, he's like, I see a lot of people who are trying to teach a specific swing instead of trying to figure out how people move and putting kids in the most advantageous spot to find success. And I've always thought that way. And I thought it was a refreshing thing to read in a world of all these hitting gurus that you see all over the place. And, I think being able to, there's no magic cure to this, as much as everyone likes to think that there is. No hitter hits the same. I believe that. Like, are there certain things that all hitters do well? Yes, there is, but no hitter hits the same. And I think to try to think that you can just go to a guy who's going to magically fix you is short-sighted. But you want to be able to find people that are going to, one, be able to get you better, and also, two, tell you what it is that you need to work on. Because there's going to come a point, and especially if you are a recruitable student athlete, there's going to come a point where your swing or your pitches or your location, whatever it is going to be scrutinized. And what you want to have is somebody who you're going to, that you're spending money and time with, that can help you develop those things. Because if I continually show up to watch a kid hit and you cannot pull a baseball, and you can't get to an inside fastball that's 81 miles an hour, I'm not going to recruit you. And that's just the reality. Like, you're going to see mid to upper 80s, low 90s on the inside corner, on the inside part of the plate, Division III level. And if you can't get the bat head to 81, or you're getting blown up by 82, you're not going to get recruited. And you need to be able to have somebody that can help you get to the point where you're going to be able to handle what is going to be, what you are going to face. And I think that that's something that, you need to be able to work through and kind of realize when you go through this process of, okay, where are my shortcomings and how do I get those better? And who can I go to and work with in order to help me get to the point that I need to be? And those are things that I think are, wildly underrated in this process. And I do think that there is an ego in a lot of this stuff, that I'm right and I have the answers and that guy doesn't know. And like, it's not about you. It's about the kid and being able to develop the kid into the best player he can, to give himself the best advantage to get to the goals and the level of play that he wants to get to. And if that means he goes to, a hitting guy here and a pitching guy at a different facility and an infield guy somewhere else, like, then so be it. Like, it's not on you. That it's for the kid to be able, if that's what they've done and that's what that family chooses and that kid's finding success, then that's what it should be. because ultimately it's about the kid. It's not about anything else.
Yeah, your kids gotta, and once again, it comes down to people. Like your kids gotta want to show up and work with that person, right? One, can they get him better? But does your kid enjoy going to his hitting lesson? Like, is he excited to go work with that coach? Because if the fun's not there, like if that's not a person that your son likes to show up and go play with, um, you're immediately not getting as much out of it as you can because that person isn't the type of person that your kid's fired up to go and work with. And, that matters. And once again, there's a lot of guys who can teach hitting. There's a lot of guys who can teach pitching, but you got to find the right people to do it. And people that are genuinely invested in your kid. They're not just going to plug them into some system that they're going to actually work with them to help them get incrementally better and give them good advice and put them in a situation where they can continue to develop. And you got to do your homework a little bit. And you got to make sure that you feel really comfortable with the individual that you're sending your son to. Vet people, ask questions, get some opinions of some other people who may work with that person. Like you want to get it right. You want to at least do the best you can to get it right. But I mean, it's hard to, we could talk around this for hours, I think, but the moral of the story is make sure that you got people in your corner that you trust, that are invested in you and your son, that are going to tell you all the good stuff you need to hear, but are also going to tell you the things that you don't want to hear because it's the best thing that you need to hear at that moment. Because this process is long, it's iterative, it's full of ups and downs, and you need people in your corner that you could trust and that are going to help you get to the finish line of finding the right home. And it's on you as a parent, it's on you as a player to do your due diligence and to make sure that you're stacking the chips in your favor with people who can help your son develop, that are going to help yourself develop from a baseball perspective, that are going to help him develop from a personal perspective, that are going to make sure that they're taking the right classes and pushing themselves in the classroom, right? Teachers can have an incredible impact on kids. And I don't want to downplay that because we didn't hit on it too much, but and then the other piece is make sure you have somebody in your corner who's going to actually be able to point you in the right direction from the recruiting perspective, right? Do they know college coaches? Do they know the college landscape? Do they know where your son fits in? Are they going to give you an honest assessment of where your son fits in? Or are they just going to blow smoke up your ass and tell you what you want to hear because they want you to play for their travel team? Don't be scared of some honesty because I think it's really what drives this process. And sometimes the tough conversations are the ones that lead to the most positive outcome. And you don't kick the can down the road by coddling somebody. You give them the information that they need in the moment so they can continue to improve, and surround yourself with people that do that and you'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I wanted to say as I thought about this, and I'm going to say it, but I want to say it with an asterisk of if people are telling you that they don't know what these college coaches are looking at about your son and why he's not being recruited, if they've never coached in college or haven't necessarily done it in a very long time, I shouldn't say that. If they've never coached in college and they've never really played at a super high level, like you should be wary. Because we hear that a lot. Our coach tells us he doesn't know why. Like, well, I can tell you why. And that's, to me, it's that old, we've always done it this way is one of the scariest statements you could ever say, because that's just, that's not something that should ever happen. It's the same kind of thing to me. Like, they don't know what they're doing. Like, well, maybe not everybody, but a good portion of them have a pretty good idea of what's going on. So, I think that should be something that you should be wary about. We've talked about this before, and I'll briefly touch on it. But we had this conversation with Jonathan. If you're a super high end academic kid, like you're going to want to be able to have somebody who has done that and knows how to kind of navigate the academic process of college baseball. I don't think we have to delve a whole hell of a lot into it, to be completely honest with you. We did that whole We did a whole podcast on it. It's episode 38 with Jonathan Grosset. So it's not necessarily something that we need to go super in depth in here, but I would be remiss to mention that, when we talk about development and we talk about teams and we talk about all this stuff, like, from an academic standpoint, you want to make sure that there's someone, whether it's in the baseball world or your high school or, independent counselor, whatever it is, someone who knows kind of the inner workings of what's going to happen from a transcript and school standpoint and admission standpoint, that you're on the right track to be able to get into the schools it is that you are looking to get into. And again, we don't need to go super in depth into this, but I think we would be remiss not to just mention that, because that's a component of this as well. But you can apply the same academic information we talked about in episode 38 to, non high-end academic schools, like, they're generally going to be, a little bit easier to get into than the Ivies and the NESCACs and things of that nature. But, if that's what you aspire to, you're going to want to make sure that you have somebody that, has either done that before, or, find somebody who can really help you so that you can navigate that process as well.
Spot on, Coach. The academic world is its own little nuanced recruiting process that goes well beyond just the talent level. We all know that there's way more to the admissions process than I got a 4.0. So, like I said, listen to episode 38. We unpack that one pretty well. Definitely a lot of information in there in terms of what that world looks like. But if you do find yourself as somebody who's aspiring to play high academic type of school, definitely take the time to listen to that, because you're going to want somebody. You're going to need the knowledge there, and you're likely going to need somebody who's going to be able to point you in the right direction, because it's not quite as straightforward as being good and having a good GPA. Anything else you want to add on this one, Coach?
No, I think we covered a lot.
People matter. Surrounding yourself with good people really matters. Do the best you can to set your kid up for success by putting people in the corner that you trust, that are invested in your kid and have the knowledge and the wherewithal to point you in the right direction when it comes to the recruiting process. With that being said, Coach, I hope you have a wonderful night. Everybody listening, I hope you have a wonderful evening as well. If you're listening to during the day, I hope you have a great day. We will catch up with you next week. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.